Good evening. I'd like to take a few minutes to read you a bedtime story. This is one of my most favorite tales. It's called King Solomon and the Bee, especially because the weather is getting nice and warmer, more sun out. We sometimes hear and see bees buzzing. It's a beautiful sound, and bees are necessary, but sometimes bees might scare us a little bit because they have a stinger. So here's a story that I think will help put things in perspective, a certain kind of light. King Solomon was the wisest and smartest king of his days. Not only could the king speak every language in the world, he could also talk to the animals. Wow, that's pretty impressive. Look at that. Talking to horses and camels and ostriches and giraffes and elephants and peacocks and birds and bees. The king lived in a big palace surrounded by a magnificent garden where beautiful flowers grew. There you can see, Jerusalem and his palace was supposed to be beautiful, and probably in the spring and summer there were so many colors of different beautiful flowers. When it was hot in the palace, King Solomon was in the habit of taking his afternoon nap under the shade of a broad-leaf fig tree in his garden. One day, while the king was sleeping under the tree, a young bee flew into the garden. It flew from one pretty flower to another, happily drinking the nectar. When it had had enough, the bee decided to rest and land on, of all things, the king's nose. This tickled the king. Half asleep, he raised his hand. The hand frightened the bee, and the bee stung the king's nose. Well, there's, the flowers in the garden. And there you see the king sleeping peacefully, and he's about to swat the bee on his nose. And we know what's going to happen, I imagine. The pain woke King Solomon up. As his nose became swollen, and the pain grew worse and worse, his rage mounted. "What insect dared to sting the king's nose?" he shouted. As his nose became redder and redder, and grew to be as big as a cucumber, he commanded with fury, "All bees, hornets, wasps, and flies, appear immediately before me." And there's the king. He's so angry. You can see his nose is all big and red because of the sting. And he's calling forth all the insects with stingers that bite, sting. From every hive and nest, from near and far, swarms of bees, hornets, wasps, and flies flew in a panic to the king's garden. Ooh, God, I wouldn't want to be around there when all these insects fill the air. They were all buzzing in confusion when King Solomon shouted, "Silence!" A hush fell upon all. Pointing to his nose, the king roared, "Who among you dared to do a thing like this to the king?" Nobody moved. Nobody buzzed. "Who among you dared to do a thing like this to the king?" Solomon repeated. Finally, a small bee flew straight to him and said, "I am the one, my lord, my king." Before the king had time to get angry and punish the bee, it pleaded, "Oh, my lord, my king, please don't be angry. I am a young and foolish bee. I have not yet learned the difference between a flower and a nose, or between one nose and another, especially the nose of my lord, my king, a nose with a rose-like fragrance and a banana-like grace." And there you see the bee kind of trying to plead with the king. You think the king will forgive the bee? Let's find out. As the bee talked, a faint smile grew on King Solomon's face. The bee gathered more courage and continued, "I've sinned, my lord, my king, and I am sorry. Do not be angry with me. Do not punish me. Who knows? Maybe one day, my lord, my king, I will be able to repay you with a favor." King Solomon burst out laughing. "Ha! You, a little creature like you, will repay the king?" He laughed so much that he could not talk. He just motioned to the little bee and all the other insects to fly away. When the king stopped laughing, his servant put ointment on his nose, and soon the pain and swelling went away. Before long, the king forgot all about the bee. Here he's laughing, just sending the bee on its way, and all the bees and all the insects are flying away. One day, the queen of Sheba came to the palace to visit the king. It's from a faraway land. She was a beautiful, wise queen, and she came bearing gifts. She had heard how smart the king was, and in order to test him, she had brought with her all sorts of difficult riddles, puzzles, and questions. One by one, she presented them to the king, and one by one, he solved them. The time came for the last test. There she is, trying to quiz the king and see if she can stump him, and there he is offering all sorts of answers, solutions, because he was very wise. The queen brought to the throne room several of her young maidens. Each of them held a bouquet of beautiful flowers. Before you, O King Solomon, the hands of the maidens are bouquets of flowers. Only one of them is made up of real flowers. The rest of the flowers are made by human hands. Do, O King, tell me which is which. And there you can see they're hiding behind all the beautiful bouquet of flowers. And how's the king going to know? They look all the same. They look like real flowers. Maybe they have fragrance on them, perfume that makes them smell like real flowers. The man-made flowers looked so perfect, so much like flowers of the fields and gardens, that the king could not tell them apart. He looked and looked some more, and still could not tell them apart. And there he is pondering. So he's very smart, can speak all these languages, but maybe he's not an expert in horticulture. I'm not great when it comes to flowers either. The king was ready to give up when he heard a faint buzz outside the window. He was the only one who heard it. When the king saw a little bee, his eyes lit up. "Open the window," he told his servant. "Be quick." And there it is outside in the garden, a butterfly flying by, and, the bee outside the window. The king says, "Open the window. Let the bee fly in." What's his plan? Does he know something we don't know? The window was open. Without anybody else noticing, the bee flew in and headed straight for one bouquet. The king smiled and pointed at the bouquet where the bee settled. "That is the bouquet of real flowers," he exclaimed, to the amazement of the Queen of Sheba and her maidens. And there he is. You could see, smiling. He's so exalted. He's pointing to the bouquet because the bee landed on the right bouquet. Because bees know. Bees know instinctively where the flowers are. And that is how the little bee repaid the king. And there it is, burrowing in. And so maybe, hopefully, you'll see some bees this summer. They really help spread the growth of plants and flowers. They're necessary, as are all insects, all creatures in our environments, in our surrounding. And I hope it's a good summer and a safe summer. The weather continues to be warm, and that we're all safe and healthy in the meantime. Rabbi Michael Stanger, have a good night. Sleep tight.